Hi, this is Kyle. Welcome to SharePoint Unscripted, and today I'm going totally unscripted. I'm not going to edit. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let go of perfection, and you get what you get, and I'm going to wait to see the feedback and things like that, if there's complaints or anything, because I've done some really big, long videos, and then I'm like, I don't want to edit them. I don't want to, it's almost a deterrent. I'm holding on to perfection and going through when I edit and say, So I'm going to make you suffer through all that and my fumbling speech. And so there it is. So this video is my recipe for starting up, ramping up governance and doing governance for SharePoint in your organization. And so I've talked about this quite a lot lately. I'm actually going through a governance planning process with an organization right now. And so this is what I told them. This is what I've told other clients. I figured out a good way to articulate it. And so I want to share that with you. And I also want to articulate the way that you don't just do it, but the way you think about it. The way you go about it, the way you present it to an organization, and then all the stuff you need to figure out and do. So we're going to start with what governance is. So I've got my mind mapping program, and I carry the mind mapping virus. So when I go into organizations and I start showing things and they realize that this guy uses mind mapping for everything and they like it, then all of a sudden they're getting mind mapping tools and they're starting to do it. It's awesome. People use Visio a lot, and it's really dragging the box and clicking on it, updating it, and getting the different shapes and stuff like that to build a diagram. Can take hours, if not days. I can whip stuff out in a mind map very quickly, and that's why I like it so much, because I want things to be as easy as possible. Anyway, that's my spiel on mind mapping. So what is governance? So people think of governance, they think of the government, because those words are very similar, and kind of that's what the government does. So think about what governance does, or what a government does, is they make the rules, they enforce the rules, they have services, they have all sorts of other stuff to serve the area they govern and to keep things under control. So governance is about I took the, I'm going to start over. Okay. And I'm not going to edit that out. So governance is basically, in terms of SharePoint, it's more than that. Governance is the plan for how you're going to do SharePoint. Governance is not just planning governance. And that's kind of been the thought and approach in the past. When people think about governance, they think they have to make a governance committee, and they think it's about all the policies and processes to enforce those policies. And so that team will meet and develop that. And they'll create a big document that has all those things outlined in it. And that's not how you should look at governance. You should look at governance as your playbook for how you're going to do SharePoint. Governance planning isn't planning governance. Governance planning is your SharePoint planning. How are we going to go about this? Because all of the actions and things that you need to govern, there's a lot of detail behind that. So if you want to do things like have a consistent experience for people, and have rules about where content is placed and what content has to be on a page for your organization, you need to figure out how to do that. You got to create templates, and you got to keep people from using other templates that don't have that. So governance ties into how you operate so closely and what you need to do and what you need to build, that it's not just governance. So everything that you do in SharePoint should be under the governance umbrella. And all your planning should be under the governance umbrella. And how you go about that requires a process. It requires you to do certain things. It requires you to go into depth and a level of detail, and there's a lot of work and things like that. But if it all comes back to governance, then governance really does touch all these things and account for everything. And if you're doing it right, then you will meet your goals for the platform and get it to do what you want it to do, because you've thought all this stuff out. And you've thought, what do I have to prevent from happening? What do I have to control so that we keep things the way we want them to as an organization? So governance is figuring out how you're going to go about doing SharePoint to great detail. It's about defining who's going to do what. So you have ownership, goals, responsibilities. It's about identifying policies and processes that already exist that you need to line up with. And it's about establishing kind of your mission for SharePoint. So it's your vision. It's why you're doing it. It's your goals. These are the kind of the things that we want to have happen. These are the ideas that we want to accomplish. And it's your objectives. These are the things we need to do to make this happen. And then from that, you're going to have a strategy. So we have these objectives. How are we going to meet these objectives? Because if we meet these objectives, we've met our goals and achieved our vision. And so you think about this, and this is practical. So a lot of times we think of a vision, we think of a mission as just this idea. And it's like just this warm, fuzzy thing to say that we want a great employee experience. We want to solve the information problem. We want to manage our information better. We want to adopt a new tool set to deal with the content problem that we face right now by doing things the old way with the old tools. We want to usher in a new era of working and managing with information and give our employees all the tools they need to do that and the know-how. So you're, excuse me. So that's your vision. That drives your goals. Goals drive your objectives. Objectives drive your strategy. Strategy drives the actions you need to do to make it all happen. And then it goes back up. If you do these actions according to the strategy, you'll meet your objectives to realize your goals, to realize your vision. So that's where it starts. And that's how you figure out what we want to do, what we need to do. So if your vision is to have this organized, wonderful experience where people are finding things, and your goal is to increase findability and improve organization, reduce duplication of efforts, if those are your goals, and your objective is to provide an enterprise search experience to make that happen, is to define a better information architecture, is to purchase or develop a better tool set to do that, if those are your objectives, and your strategy is to purchase SharePoint to do these things, and to stand up an enterprise search center, and then your actions are strategy, goals, objectives. So your strategy is to do those things, and your action is to actually purchase SharePoint and do the stuff you need to do to get search right so it helps you out. So it's all got to line up. It's all got to be, it's a very practical approach. And it starts with a vision. And so governance is going to identify that vision. Not dream it up, but identify it. That this needs to happen. And our vision is, if this happens, then it's going to improve things for our organization. We're going to get more value. We're going to save time. We're going to have better accuracy, better content. So governance is developing that, and then it's driving all of these things, all these actions that have to take place to make this vision happen. Because you want SharePoint to do something for your organization. You want it to do a specific thing for your organization. And if you want it to do what you bought it for, you have to take actions. You have to do these things as an organization. If you don't have governance, if you haven't figured that out, and you just throw SharePoint out there, which many organizations do and have done in the past, you will not get the results you want. So governance is about defining that vision, goals, objectives, strategy, and then figuring out the actions that have to take place. Your governance committee is not doing that work. Your governance committee is a decision-making body made up of people that have the authority and the knowledge required to say yes or no. And so in many cases, you have to give them the knowledge to make that decision. You can't expect this group of people, the kind of people you need, are at a certain level so they can make those decisions that affect a lot of people, because your governance is affecting a whole lot of people in your organization, because everybody's using SharePoint in some way eventually, or at least that's the goal. You need those people, and they're not going to do the legwork, nor should they. So you need other people to do that. So you're going to have a governance committee that blesses everything, and they are the ruling authority over how you're going to do SharePoint. They're a ruling authority over your SharePoint business service. But out of that, you need specific teams that can do the work, that can figure things out, that can go to that governance committee and say, these are our recommendations, and this is the decision that needs to happen. So you need to make that decision. So the why, everyone is impacted. You bought it for a reason. It's complicated. You need to protect your data. You need to drive organizational change. You need a representation for your business. You need all your business users to be represented by governance, because it affects all of them. You can't have a small group of people making those decisions for your entire organization, because it will always be a miss. So it's not just your governance team, maybe these 10, 12, 20 people that are making these decisions and recommendations. It's all of the action teams you're going to have. All these tactical groups that are out there figuring stuff out and saying, this is how we have to do it. This is how it's done. This is how it needs to be done for our organization. Things like that. It's not just about the technology, and you're spending a ton of money. You have to do governance. You have to. If you want to do SharePoint right, you want this to be an effective business service, and you want it to do what you bought it for, you have to do governance. Enough said. I think you're convinced. So when we do governance, we need to think about so much stuff. And this is going around all our SharePoint planning. So general governance guidelines. You know, it's not a very specific thing, but it's general governance about governance. And what is that stuff? What existing policies do we leverage? Policies that are in place? How does governance align with our old governance? And more. We have all of these different things that follow under the general governance category. In SharePoint, we're going to give out sites to people. So there's a lot of thought that needs to go into that. Who can create a site? Who can make changes to a site? Who can make changes to the contents of a site? Who are these people? Who are the owners of the site? What's our process for giving people sites? What's our process for getting rid of old unused sites? All this stuff. So because we're going to have a lot of activity behind that, so we need to examine that. So if I have a program where I have site owners that I've identified that are going to own their sites, and I say you have to have 2 site owners because one might leave, and then all that knowledge of how that site is happening and configured is going to walk out the door. So you need 2, because the likelihood that they're both going to leave is rare. Not impossible, but it's rare. A lot of things around that. What sites are we going to have? What are our standards? Do we have content placement standards? What starting place are we going to give people? When we provision sites, what is that process? Do we allow people to go to the SharePoint page and click Create Site, and they'll just get a site and then they're on their own? Or do we have them meet with somebody that's an expert and they can listen to their needs and say, this is what you need to do in SharePoint. This is what your site should look like. And then go through the planning and then provide them with the site and show them how to use it, help onboard their people, help train. Maybe all that activity needs to happen to give them a really successful, positive experience. So you get adoption. So you make their lives better and not worse. Because SharePoint has to do that. If you want adoption to happen, you want people to use it, it has to make things better for them. And do you train every site owner to be an expert in SharePoint? Do you train them a little bit? Do you say, you just are responsible for this? We're going to build it for you. We're going to show you specifically how to maintain it, but we don't expect you to be a SharePoint expert. Would you rather have 10 experts that are really good at SharePoint, that are helping your 3,000 people? Or do you want to have to train 1,000 experts and build 1,000 experts in SharePoint to be site owners? What do you think is cheaper and more effective? It's if you can plug these people in to help them get started. And maybe you're not going to need all those people forever. Starting up, you're going to have a lot of sites coming in, a lot of work. So maybe you have a set of people you hire. Maybe you have a set of people that you train internally. Maybe you have a set of people that you borrow, consultants, contractors, to get that group of people large enough to get the results you want quickly and to make things good for your people. A lot around sites. Content. What's allowed in SharePoint? Do we have any rules around current content? Keeping content up to date. Do we have any guidelines for what will allow it to be moved over? Do we have guidelines around what we're going to let people do when they migrate the content? Content migration policies. What are our guidelines around good content? So we have content criteria we create and say that these are the rules. This is your measuring stick. This is your template that you have to follow in order to get a site and put things in that site. You have to clean up, organize. You have to identify the properties, the metadata, the content types. You can't bring anything that hasn't been changed in 2 years unless it's reference material that is legitimate, frequently referenced, not just we might need it someday. So developing all those guidelines and processes around that. And maybe you have a migration team that works with each group and helps them to develop that, because a lot of this stuff is brand new to people. And they're looking at a sea of content and they don't know when to start. They don't know what process to go through. So you might have to define that. Just things like user profiles. You're going to have a user profile in SharePoint. Everybody can see it. There's a lot of information you can put out there, and there's a lot of value to having information in those profiles. Having a picture of you is helpful if you are geographically dispersed and having to meet people face to face for the first time. You know what they look like. It personalizes them. It gives you a level of familiarity. You can read a little bit about them, get to know them, and then when you meet, you'll have a better meeting. You feel like you're a little bit familiar with them and you know things about them. You can find people with similar expertise. So rules, what profile information are we going to have out there? What properties? Are we going to bring stuff over from Active Directory that doesn't exist? And does it come over through Azure AD? Probably not. So now we're going to have to create a separate sync application. And so deciding that in governance affects the actions behind it and the process. So that's why it's all tied together. Training, how are we going to train people, give them the knowledge they need? Do that just-in-time training. So we're not overwhelming people with information, but okay, you're going to be using a library. Here's how you do it. Here's how we want you to do it. Here's resources. Here's a video. Here's all this stuff. Or you're going to get a site. Okay, here's site owner training. This is a site owner agreement you have to follow. Information architecture, search, security, roles and responsibilities. All the people of SharePoint you need. Your admin, your search admin, your site collection admin, your site owners. Who are all these people? Maybe you have DBAs in there and architects if you're using the server version of SharePoint. You're in the cloud. Maybe you have an Office 365 admin. You have an Exchange admin. You have all these different people that need to be involved in this. You need to call them out. And certain departments should provide those resources. Our SharePoint admin, that's an IT role. Our training department is going to handle the training stuff, and that's not an IT role. So it should be spread out across the business. You're going to have business roles, you're going to have IT roles, you're going to have ones that could be both or are both. A person could have multiple roles, but that's stuff that has to be figured out based on what you want to accomplish. We want to have a super powered search experience where we're using every part of the buffalo. Okay, well, we got to have stuff tagged. We have to customize things so that our refiners are in place the way we want them to, and the results that are coming up are the ones we want, and that certain little cool things happen. We can promote pages. Maybe when it's open enrollment, when I type in benefits, I'll get a little ad up top, and you can click on different links to get what you need or understand the process. So we're going to make search really serve our people. Maybe you're searching other sources. Hey, we're going to point this search at your file share to help you understand your content and locate things and find old stuff and help you clean up and things like that. So all that stuff has to be considered, and if we're going to do all that search stuff, we need a search expert. So roles and responsibilities, design, branding. You're going to let people create their own sites. You're going to have somebody with wood or somebody with orange. There's all these different composed looks you can use. Are we going to lock that down? Do we want consistent branding? That all has to be figured out. Back to information architecture, do we have specific page layouts, content placement, navigation? Do we have rules around that? General technology stuff. Technical governance. Technical governance around Office 365. Do we need a separate backup solution? Is that going to give us what we need? On-prem. How are we going to configure? How's our farm set up? What's our architecture like? What's our performance standards? Things like that. So change control. Do we have change control? How are we going to do it? What parts of SharePoint fall under the change control umbrella? Because if someone adds a document, I don't want to go through a change control process. If somebody renames a site, do I want to go through a change control process? If somebody changes a URL, well, maybe you do, because it's on your intranet and 80,000 people have bookmarked it. So that has to be decided. Your roadmap. What are we going to roll out and when to make sure our organization is ready as we do these things? Because that also impacts your governance planning. If my collaboration is 2 years down the road and I'm doing Office 365 core apps and I'm doing an intranet on SharePoint where most people are going to use it like a website, I don't have to figure out collaboration right away. I need to focus on the stuff I'm doing now. So developing a roadmap is really important. So we have a lot to think about and plan for. And so how do we do that? Well, you have to have a governance committee to make decisions, but then you have to have other teams out there figuring this stuff out and making recommendations and stuff like that. So your process when you start out is you need to form your governance team. This is your core action team that is going to drive everything. It's going to develop the governance plan. It's going to curate that. It's going to recruit the governance committee members. It's going to form the action teams. It's going to drive the committee meetings. And so you need a core group of people that coordinate and serve up governance. And that's not your governance committee. And if you think it is, you're going to fail. And you're going to lose people. You're going to see committee members because nothing's going to get done. And they're like, this is worthless. This is a waste of my time. And so they're going to leave. Or all of our governance committee meetings are arguments because nobody really understands. They don't understand the recommendations or how they should do things. But if you have a clear recommendation and a decision and you understand the impact and you can communicate that to those people so they can make an informed decision and the right people are in the room, it goes a lot smoother. So you're going to form that governance team. You're going to recruit the governance committee. And with them, You're going to establish a vision. Your governance team is going to work up a vision, goals, objectives as a draft that can be vetted. You're not going to go to that governance committee and say, dream this up. You're going to dream it up and then say, change this. Make this fit our organization. Align this with our business goals. Defend this. Or defend against it. Form other special teams, action teams, and those might be 2 people. Maybe it's 1 person. Hey, go figure this out and come back and tell me. But you need those people to go off and do and find out and understand, and then they can relay that to the governance committee. Develop a strategy for accomplishing your objectives. That's your team. You might get some information from your committee, from your action teams, but you're going to develop a strategy for how you're going to do things. Identify actions that realize your strategy, and then you're going to create more governance teams from that, more action teams. Developing that roadmap is very important because that's going to tell you when you need to do those action teams, when you're ready to do that planning, and things like that. And if you spread this out and let this happen over time and figure we don't have to do this in 3 months and this is our drop dead date. We're going to roll these bits and pieces out. We're going to ramp people up. They're going to start using it. We're going to adjust. We're going to see what's working, what's not working. And as we go along, we're going to get smarter and better at it so that as we progress, good things are happening. Lather, rinse, repeat. So you need to keep this going. Governance doesn't end. There's always going to be stuff that comes up and new initiatives. When you have your intranet and your Office 365 stuff behind you and your collaboration behind you, all of a sudden records management might pop up. Oh, now we got to do a records center. And now I have to figure out how to do that. And now I have to know if we even have retention policies in place. Do we have file plans? Do we have people that represent the organization in terms of records management that can drive this? Do we have those people? Is this important to the organization? Or is this just one group of people that wants records management? And so we don't really need to go that wide. We can say, okay, you guys, we're going to work with you to figure it out. And this doesn't need to be a governance decision other than will they be allowed to do this? And do we have rules around how we want them to do this when we declare something a record? So how much rigor needs to be around that? So those things might happen. Business intelligence. We're going to start doing BI dashboards for our executives. We're going to start integrating with other systems. So we need those people involved, those integration experts. And we're going to need people that own those systems as well involved, possibly. So it's a lot to think about. So treat it like a playbook. Treat it like it's critical. Treat it like it's encompassing all of your SharePoint stuff, that it's your decision-making body for how you're going to offer your SharePoint business service. And then do it. Because if you don't, SharePoint's not going to do what you bought it for. It's not going to help your people. It has a really good chance of making people's lives worse, not better. So when you're starting out, you have to account for that. Now, here's the kicker. Maybe you can't afford to do all that. So you have to understand your approach to what you're going to deliver and offer your company. You have to understand your approach to providing SharePoint as a business service and what your budget is, what your competing projects are, what your culture is, what the needs are. Because maybe all you can afford is to buy Office 365 E3 licenses for your people and chuck it over the fence and say, we'll keep the lights on, the rest is up to you. And that's the reality of it, is depending on the size of your organization and your needs and your budget and all that stuff, that should determine where you set those expectations, what your governance is going to be, if you're going to have it, if you need it. It's like, we can't tee this up. We just can't afford it, but we think making these tools available is good enough to be a benefit, and all the new stuff that you're doing in the cloud with Office 365 and the groups and the team stuff, the team chat, all that stuff is a lot easier for people. You can throw an Office 365 group over the fence, and folks will kind of muddle their way through and do it and use it and get something out of it. And it'll be ready for mobile. You don't have to do any work around that. And you can't brand it, so you won't have to. And it sort of becomes an application you're using to do it, not an intranet, but a set of tools and a whole experience. So, a lot of decisions to make. The bigger your organization is, the more rigid you are, the more structured, the more you need to do it. And if you're going to take on that kind of initiative, you need to count the cost up front and figure it out. So really understanding what's involved and saying that, okay, if we want this out of it, this is what we have to put into it, and what's it going to cost? And do we spread that cost out over years and go slow? Do we have a really big ramp-up initiative where we pump all sorts of resources in it and money and get it done and then let it run? That's stuff that you have to figure out for yourselves. You also have to let your executives know, your leadership know about the importance of this thing. And make sure your governance team has the people that can talk to those people. Because if they don't, then they're going to make decisions that hurt you. Because they don't get it. They don't know its importance. They don't know it's a business critical app. And that wasn't defining governance. And IT doesn't think it's a business critical app. But if you have 30,000 people using it, and that's where all their information is, it's pretty fucking critical. It's pretty critical. I'm going to bleep that out. I swore, and I said I wasn't going to edit this, but I told people that I wasn't going to cuss in these videos in case people want to watch it in their companies, so I have to bleep it out. So I am going to edit something. I failed. So I hope this was useful. I really do. If you have questions, put them in the comments, and I might answer them, or I might not. I'm sorry, but maybe other people will. If I missed something important, if I said something wrong, any of that stuff, let me know. All right, that's enough for me. Have a good one. And happy governing. That was horrible. All right. How do I turn this off? Stop. If you like this video, make sure to hit like down below, or subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. Also, you can check out the description. I'll have links down there that pertain to this topic, to helpful videos and other sites and posts and whatnot. So I'm done now.